Phil Twyford.
Last week in Tauranga, I attended a public meeting, and in the course of the meeting, a woman in her 60s stood up and she told about living in her car because the Golden Grove Holiday Park, where she's been living for the last 6 months or so, is being redeveloped. She's been on the emergency housing waiting list for 6 months and is simply unable to find an affordable place to live. Another woman, a solo parent with 2 teenage children, has been living in a holiday park, the Silver Birch Holiday Park, for the last 6 months. She's a 42-year-old kindergarten teacher. She's put her name down with 4 letting agencies, no sign of anything she can afford. The Silver Birch Holiday Park owner, Sharon Markai, the next day told the Bay of Plenty Times that the holiday park was full, with up to 12 people living in each of their cabins and caravans. The majority of them, she said, were looking for an affordable place to live. Mr. Chairman, this is John Key's New Zealand. In Tauranga, one of our most affluent cities, the median rent is now $425 a week. The city is rated as severely unaffordable. The median house price is now more than 8 times the median household income in that city. People are desperate. You only need to look at the pages of the Bay of Plenty Times every day of the week to know there is an acute housing shortage. So what is this government doing with the 1,200 state houses that it owns in Tauranga? It is selling them. Is it building more houses? No. The obvious thing that you do when there's a housing crisis and a housing shortage, no, it's selling them off. This minister, Nick Smith, this housing minister, Paula Bennett, the minister responsible for social housing, they are so out of touch. Yeah. Nick Smith said yesterday that the housing crisis is a media beat-up. It's not a crisis, apparently it's a challenge. Well, Mr. Chairman, Tauranga is one of 2 areas to get its housing sold off, and there are 2 shortlisted consortia of groups. Remember these names. One of them includes John Lang, the United Kingdom-based PPP investor, another British company, Pinnacle, a Canadian real estate investor, Brookfields. The second consortia includes local iwi and Trust House, but it also includes the investment firm Morrison & Co. and 2 Australian property management companies and investors. So for all of the talk about selling state houses to the Salvation Army and non-profit groups that were going to do such a great job of managing them, this government is selling off billions of dollars of land and housing to merchant bankers, to foreign companies and property investors. But Mr. Chairman, if that wasn't bad enough, this national government has already, in this process of privatisation, displayed the Wall Street ethics that are its trademark as they've gone about selling off state housing. Merchant banker Andrew Boddy was paid $2.3 million in contracts by this government, first to advise it on developing the policy to sell off state houses, and secondly to advise it on actually how to go about selling it. $2.3 million over 5 years. One of his clients throughout that process was John Lang, the UK PPP investor, who had expressed an interest in buying the houses and is now one of the shortlisted parties to buy over 1,000 houses, state houses being sold in Tauranga. Is that a conflict of interest? Is that a conflict of interest? The government said no, there's no conflict of interest. And it took an investigation by the Office of the Auditor General to show that they had broken their own procurement rules time and time again by not tendering that $2.3 million of contracts to Andrew Boddy, the merchant banker. The Office of the Auditor General said they had failed to follow proper procedures in relation to the conflict of interest, and they were wrapped over the knuckles. And this, sir, is what makes it so disturbing that the national government recently legislated to give the ministers, in this case it's Bill English and Paula Bennett, extraordinary unfettered powers to sell off billions of dollars of state houses to whoever they like on whatever terms they like. They swept away all of the normal legislative safeguards for the sale of state assets in this kind of situation. At a time...
I call the Honourable Joe Goodhue.